Good afternoon, Special Agent. My name is Daniel Cooper and I have a special assignment for you. I'm tasking you to find a high-value target and use any and all means necessary in order to remove the threat. First, I need to brief you on everything about Canada, which is the country the target currently is hiding. And if you're willing to accept this mission, let's begin with a briefing. We'll begin your briefing by looking at some of the history of Canada. Aboriginal settlements existed in the region for about 16,000 years. They're believed to have crossed into the North American continent using the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia into what's now Alaska, following glacial melting. The first European contact was believed to be as early as 985 AD, near Newfoundland. Canada itself was formed in 1867, with the union of 3 British North American colonies, after land was ceded from France following the 7 Years' War. It was originally divided into 4 provinces of British North America, and essentially a self-governing colony, the British Empire. The Canadian flag you're currently looking at here was adopted in 1965. However, sovereign status was not granted until later in the 20th century. In 1982, the Canada Act, or the Constitution Act, was passed by the United Kingdom, later by Canada in 1984. The British Crown and Parliament granted authority for Canada to be governed by their own set of laws. Prior to that, Canada was primarily governed by the British law. It's noteworthy that French majority provincial regions had little participation in those 1982 actions and have since expressed frustrations with the political structure that was established. You can see from looking at the picture that Canada has several mountainous and glacial regions and is geologically active, with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions in its geological history. It has greatly varying climates by region, especially the northern coastal regions versus the interior regions of the country, where average annual temperatures range from -4 degrees Fahrenheit to 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow-covered areas range from just several months to year-round. It also contains most of the world's fresh water, with as many as 31,700 large lakes. Canada is the second largest geographic country in the world, second only to Russia, and is surrounded by 3 oceans. Canada also has 8 distinct forest regions and vast stretches of interior plains and lowlands. So now let's talk a little bit about the people of Canada. Despite its large geography, it has a relatively small population. Canada has a population of approximately 35.54 million as of July 2014 versus an estimated 321 million in the United States. The median age of the population is around 41 years old. 86% of that population lives in just 4 provinces. 38% of those live in Ontario alone. And 81% of the population is urban. The U.S. Census Bureau projects continued population growth all the way through 2050. 1/3 of that population identifies itself as having British origin, 15% French origin, 12% Western European, and the remaining from numerous other countries of origin. Both English and French are identified as the official languages. 67% of the population speaks English, 21.5% French, and approximately 11.4 non-official languages. Statistics Canada projects 28% of the population will be foreign-born by the year 2031.
The Canadian government is considered a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. The executive power rests with the British Crown, who's currently Queen Elizabeth II. The Prime Minister acts as head of Parliament, head of the political leader of the party with the most parliamentary seats, which is currently the Conservative Party. Canada has a bicameral parliament with 105 Governor-General appointed senators and 308 voter-elected members of the House of Commons.
You'll see here by looking at the slide that in 2013 Transparency International ranked Canada as one of the top 10 least corrupt countries in the world, at number 9. In contrast, the United States ranks higher in perceived corruption at 19. According to the World Bank, it ranks 95 in control of corruption versus 85 for the U.S. However, Canada still has problems with corruption, specifically in response to issues of bribery. A 2014 Ernst & Young Global Fraud Survey indicated a large number of Canadian executives have concern about widespread practices of bribery in Canada. In addition, a large percentage of Canadian citizens view institutions and political figures as corrupt. You need to know a little bit about the economy of Canada. The current gross domestic product in U.S. dollars is about $1.787 trillion as of 2014 versus $17.42 trillion in the United States. Family net income per capita in U.S. dollars is about $51,690 versus $55,200 in the United States, giving Canada a high-income country designation by the World Bank. Canada scores 32 in the Ease of Doing Business Index on a scale of 1 to 185. World Trade Organization report indicates that 740,000 new jobs have been created since January 2011, 94% of those being full-time. Canada has experienced solid GDP growth since that period, with unemployment dropping from 7.7% down to 6%. Canada currently has a AAA credit rating and considered stable. The form of currency in Canada is the Canadian dollar. It's had significant reduction in value compared to the U.S. dollar, with highs near parity to now lows under 80 cents. Canada is also very heavily reliant and engaged in trade. It is the 13th largest merchandise exporter and the 11th largest merchandise importer worldwide. Its neighbor, the United States, is Canada's largest and most important trade partner. And a recent report indicates that in-country exporters have been impacted by depreciation of the Canadian dollar when compared to the U.S. dollar. Foreign direct investment is very important to Canada. While outward investments increased, inflows of direct investment decreased by 18% from 2013 to 2014. Pictured here is Stephen Harper. He's the current Prime Minister and head of the Conservative Party. More progressive and liberal parties were in control of the Canadian government for much of the latter part of the 20th century. However, Conservative Party seized control of the government in the early part of the 21st century and remains in power today with 167 seats in Parliament. Traditionally, two major political parties, the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada, dominated Canadian politics. However, recently the New Democratic Party has emerged to challenge the Conservative policy and now has 102 seats in Parliament.
Now we will speak about the technological aspect in Canada, and remember that Internet is one of your weapons. As you can see here, the statistics gives the information on the number of Internet users in Canada. As of July 2015, Canada has 35.5 million users, which corresponds to 92.9% of the population. The global Internet penetration is how much households are connected. As you can see that 87% of the Canadians are connected compared to 81% of the US households. Another point to consider is the phishing, as the protection of your information in Canada is 2.8% compared to 39.4% in the United States. When it comes to being connected, Canadians spend an average of 36.3 hours browsing and visiting websites, and it could jump to 75 hours if we account for mobile devices. Americans, however, spend 35.2 hours, and Canadians are more likely to watch videos online, where 74% of Canadians stream videos versus 63% in the US. Canadia's enterprises has sold more than 136 billion goods and services over the internet in 2013. So therefore, another point we need to consider is that the Canadian online shoppers report an annual average of spending $375 on purchases made through Canadian website versus $150 through US websites. As you can see here, the legal system is split into several branches. The first branch is the statutory courts, which handles the great majority of cases that come into the system. Second branch is the superior courts. These courts deal with more serious crimes and also take appeals from the statutory court judgments. Third branch is the Court of Appeal and the Federal Court of Appeal, which is a higher level. And then the highest one is the Supreme Court of Canada. Also, there is an important court, the tax courts, which gives the individuals and companies an opportunity to settle disagreements with the federal government on matters arising under federal tax and revenue legislation. The Environmental Performance Index ranks how well countries perform on high-priority environmental issues in two broad policy areas: protection of human health from environment harm and protection of ecosystems. By looking at the chart, it is very obvious that Canada is at higher rank in all aspects except the biodiversity, where US is this higher rank. Overall, Canada is ranked as the 24th out of 178 countries, while US is ranked as 33rd. Finally, the last and most important point is the SWOT analysis. We're going to start with strengths. First point is the higher quality education, which will lead to higher skill level and a more solid work ethic. The natural resources, if you utilize them well, they will be a key factor to your success. The economic diverse base will help in achieving the company goals of stability and growth. Also, the growing labor force with strong work ethics and skills will help the company to grow. On the other hand, the weaknesses are the low inflation rate. Unfortunately, if the inflation rate continues at this rate and keeps decreasing, at some point Canada will enter a recession period, which will not be good for our future. Also, the soft GDP and the high household debt. Canadian household debt compared with income rose to a record in the second quarter, highlighting one of the key vulnerabilities to the financial system. Third part of the analysis is the opportunities. The low levels of self-employment and the government greater freedom to invest will lead to a shift towards people starting business. Finally, the threats will be the high interest rates, because this will affect both consumer and firm and increased cost of borrowing and will hinder the economic growth of the company. Finally, agent, we're going to wrap it up with the most important points. First, Canada is the second largest geographic country in the world with a population of 35.5 million. The government system is a federal constitutional monarchy. The economy currently has a AAA credit rating and considered stable. And regarding the trading, Canada is the 13th largest exporter and the 11th largest importer. And the political system is mainly split to two political parties, the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada. With respect to technology, 87% of the Canadian households are connected to internet and they do more shopping online. Finally, Canada has a better life quality according to the API.